Hey everybody, in this video I want to show you how you can create shapes out of your sound cues inside of your level, because not everything will be a point in your level. Sometimes you'll have like a room sound or something, and we'll take a look at that and see how you can do it and some of the things to watch out for as you build it. So by the end, we're going to have a room that we have a shape for, so you can see this right there. And if we walk into the room, that's how we hear it all throughout. Right. We might refer to this as a room tone, but it's basically having an audio that fills up a space rather than being a specific point in an area. All right, let's get to it. Before we were working off of a cue, if you saw the other video about point emitters, in this case, you're going to have different shapes that you want to fill a sound with. So like a room. And all your rooms are going to be very different. So whether or not it's worth making a cue is kind of up to you. It might be good to have a good default for your sound and then override it and reshape it. But you're going to have to customize it. So we're going to have to be overriding things for this to work. So first thing is I'm going to try and find a cue that I like. I think Lido one's pretty good. So again, you can make a cue out of this, or you can just drag it in. If you do not make a cue out of it, just make sure that on the wave over here that you go down and set it to loop. Right here at the top is looping, kind of a stretched out view, but make sure that this looping right here is checked. Otherwise it's only going to play and then it's going to stop. Okay, so once you have that, again, either make the cue or just drag this in. I'm just going to drag this in directly and customize it and pull this in. And I want this sound to only fill this space. You can see right now it's filling the entire thing. And this sound is going to be a little bit hard to hear. It's just a little bit more subtle than our other one. So what I want to do is up top, I'm going to override the attenuation right here. Okay. So once we override the attenuation, we stop hearing it unless we're really close. This is kind of not what I want. Now, by default, it's going to give you the circle emitter. I wanted to show you that for a lot of rooms, you're going to have a blocky shape probably, unless you're making circular rooms. It's a lot harder to do that in game development. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the shape down here under attenuation shape. I'm going to change that to a box, right? And you'll see that it starts huge by default. So we're going to turn that down a whole lot. It's mainly this fall off distance over here. So I'm going to put this at something like 400 maybe. And then at this point, I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to reshape it however I need. I think the default that starts off as a line, I don't know why, but really if you open up the extents over here and you expand that, if you want a box, you want 400. Let's just start at 400, 400, 400, 400. Okay. So now I have a cube. This is pretty close. And at this point, you can come down here and you can resize it like that. Might be able to use the tools sometimes. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But I'm just going to reshape it with the extents over there. And one thing you'll see that is you kind of have to be rough with this, because if you match the room, if I go in here, you hear there's kind of a fade in. Maybe we want that, maybe we don't, because potentially our room could be like a big generator room or something that makes a lot of sound, and we would want to hear it through a wall or as we approach, right? In the case of this light hum, maybe that's a little loud. So one thing you can do is you can come over here and you can make the fall off a lot lower. So, come down here, fall off distance, you put that 200, right? And you still may hear that when you get close, but maybe you don't want to hear it as much when you're near the wall inside of here. Doesn't matter. I just want to show you that you can adjust that if you need the fall off. I would put it pretty close to the walls and just blend those together, because you do want some kind of fade as you go between rooms. But if you expand this to roughly cover the room, you can get this effect where anytime we're in the room, we hear a sound. This is also very useful in horror type of games when we're trying to create a mood inside of a room. Now, another thing you're going to notice, hear that panning effect? That's useful if we want it to sound like it's coming from the middle. But in most cases, we don't really want that panning effect. We want to just have a general sound when we're inside of a room, if that's the effect we want. Again, it's not realistic, but it creates an effect, and this is how you would do that. I wanted to show you down here under the spatialization method, right down here. One thing we can do to minimize this a bit is our normalized 3D stereo. This will make it sound less like it's coming out of two ears, and will kind of crush it down to the center a bit more. So if I hit normalized 3D stereo audio like that, you'll hear the difference. So we're still getting that panning, but it's a little less extreme. The other thing we can do is we can mess around with these two non-spatialized radius and our 3D stereo spread. These two things kind of determine how wide the area is, for which it doesn't sound like it's coming from a single point. It sounds like it's just all encompassing and all around us. I'm just going to turn both of these up to something like 500 maybe. You can mess with these two individually if you want to experiment more, but I'm just going to keep it like that. You see how now when I turn my my character around, it sounds like the room is just emitting all of the sound together. That's more of the effect we want. And with that, I mean, you could take this and start to put areas of sounds inside of your levels. If you want to create a feeling inside of a space, this is a useful way to do that. And you can combine the two, right? You could have some parts of your level where you have specific emitters. You can draw the player to. Oh, I turned that off. Let's turn that back on. Auto activate. Okay. There's probably an easier way to do that. Right. You have emitters and you have rooms and you have combinations, right? Like what if you had a sound inside of a room that is emitting its own sound, right? So you really want to combine the two. That's how you start to create more believable spaces. So hopefully this gives you an idea of how you can start to create areas of sound. I like to use this for room tones or for areas that I want to have a particular undertone, because by default, everything is silent. And usually you don't want silent in games unless you're trying to create a very specific effect. In the real world, we hear sounds in almost all places. It's very rare to hear total silence, usually something like a computer hum if you're on a computer right now, or air conditioners or so forth. So just determine if you want point emitters or if you want room shape emitters, but this is how you can create those and kind of a starting point for how you can experiment with that.